Hey there guys, Mr. Donut here, just stopping by to share another video lesson with you. So today I want to review developmental psychology, and I want to make it a point to cover this chapter because it is quite extensive. So today we'll start the review for this chapter and then we will finish it on Friday. And remember also that on Thursday, tomorrow, we'll have another FRQ to work on together as a class. We'll work on it together. But today and then on Friday, we're reviewing developmental psychology. So let's go ahead and just dive into it. So developmental psychology, this is the study of what happens to humans from womb to tomb, or from the time that they're born all the way till death. So just keep that in mind. And let's just start this off by covering how much of this will be on the AP exam. So 79% of this chapter will be covered on the AP exam. So you will have um, some question about it on the FRQ section, or you might not. So let's go ahead and start covering it. So developmental psychology is a branch of psychology that studies physical, cognitive, and social change throughout the lifespan. So development is a sequence of age-related changes that occurs as a person progresses from conception to death. So that's all developmental psychology is. That's what its focus is. So developmental psychology would love to understand what happens to individuals from birth all the way to death. So now moving on. Developmental psychology looks at how thinking, feeling, behaviors change throughout a person's life. And also it looks at like three data or debates. It looks at the nature versus nurture, looks at continuity versus discontinuity, and stability versus change. Are we born to this world and then are we taught through nature or nurture, or is it both? Are we typically continuous with our personality, or are we discontinuous? Is our personality stable, or is it subject to change? So this is what developmental psychology is really interested in. Now, two big questions about heredity and the environment is how much weight does each wield, and then how do they interact? Nature refers to the effects of heredity, and nurture influences the environment. So nature is what we're born with. Nature is our heredity, and then nurture influences to the environment that we're in. So it's our nurture, or the type of experience that we're undergoing due to the environment. So, how to study the nature and nurture interaction? Well, there are two effective ways to study nature and nurture. Twin studies is a big go-to for understanding this kind of phenomenon. So identical twins have the same genotype, and fraternal twins have an average of 50% of their genes in common. Adoption studies similarities in adoption studies with the biological family and support nature, while similarities with the adoptive family support nurture. So typically, it doesn't matter where an individual is placed, right? Let's say that you have two twins, and then these twins are up for adoption. One ends up going to Texas, the other one ends up going to New York. So because of this, we can say that um, their way of being might be completely different. But when it comes to interacting with the world and uh, having a sense of personality, they do relate together. So twin studies allow us to understand why the differences in genes really affect the difference in personality. So now, when we're talking about continuity versus discontinuity, all we're talking about is how the human development is gradual or continuous process in which individuals build or previously acquired knowledge and skills, or is it a discontinuous process involving a series of discrete stages in which new knowledge and behaviors emerge abruptly? So, is it continuous or discontinuous? Now, the continuity view says that change is gradual. Children become more skillful in thinking, talking, and acting much the same way as they get taller. So we know that skilled behaviors often happen in this way, as with trial and error method of learning to walk and eat with a spoon. So trial and error method is something that does help us understand the world better, and thus relates to how our continuity is affected by the change and the things that we're learning in the world. So discontinuity view, the discontinuity view sees development as more abrupt, a succession of changes. So it's discontinuity says that we actually jump from stage to stage. Procedures different behaviors or produces different behaviors in different age-specific life periods called stages. In order to advance, an individual must reach a behavioral goal in order to proceed. This is evident in beginning readers who suddenly discover the connection between letters and sounds. Awesome. So moving on. Discontinuity. I also have to tell you that in developmental theories, discontinuity supports or discontinuity is supported by Freud's psychosexual stages, Piaget's stages of cognitive development, and Erikson's theories of development. So all of these stages of development are said to be discontinuous because we need to jump from stage to stage. It is not a continuous process. It doesn't just continue on. So that's what they mean by discontinuous. It's one stage and then another stage. It's discontinuous. So moving on. Discontinuity view, right? We often hear people talking about children going through stages in life, the terrible twos, right? Oh, puberty, adolescence. Well, developmental stages are periods in life initiated by distinct transitions in physical or psychological functioning. So people go through the same stages in the same order, but not necessarily at the same rate. However, if a person misses this stage, it can have lasting consequences. Note, continuity could be exemplified by an escalator that moves towards the top floor, never stopping, while discontinuity is like an elevator that stops at every floor on the way to the top. So continuity is just like an escalator, just keeps going. It's continuous. And then discontinuous type of development, it's kind of like an elevator. It makes stops at every single stage. Awesome. So discontinuity view. Let's move on. So when we talk about stability versus change, we're just talking about whether a personality trait or personality traits are present in an individual at birth and remain constant or change throughout the lifespan. For example, does a naturally extroverted or talkative baby remain that way for the entire life? Well, this is also relatable to the nature and nurture debate, right? Typically, cross-sectional and longitudinal studies are used in research concerning stability versus change. And typically, once we are either continuous or discontinuous, um, or when we're thinking about continuous and discontinuous, it is better to understand that development always happens at a very discontinuous type of development. Awesome. So, just to expand a little bit here, stability versus change. Psychoanalysts say that personalities are developed in the first 5 years of life and then stay. Change theories or theorists say that personalities are simply modified by interactions. Developmental psychologists, on the other hand, say that some things like temperament and outgoingness stay stable, but social attitudes can actually change. So, there are a lot of debates out there in reference to stability versus change, but the big debate or the big reasoning is that we do change, although we are a little bit stable. All right, so moving on to the union of egg and sperm. So let's go ahead and talk about this. Developmental periods to know. You guys need to know the prenatal development period. So the prenatal development period is just a period of development that undergoes or that we undergo when in the tomb of our mother. So the neonatal period is birth to about 1 month. This is the neonatal birth period. After the neonatal birth period, we have infancy. This is 1 month to about 18 to 24 months. This is an infant. So now, when we're talking about prenatal or before birth, right, this type of development, you do need to understand the one that happens inside the womb. It's very important. You might get a question or two out of it. So the genetic plan here, it determines how all of the organs will be formed. Differentiation are stem cells that are capable of forming into any organ in the body. Mitosis is the process of or during which the zygote divides first into two cells, then four, then eight, and so on until the mass of the cells becomes a baby. So that's mitosis. Now, when we're talking about development, we also need to consider that the age of viability is the age at which the baby can survive premature birth, which is 5.75 to 6 months. Believe it or not, a baby infant can actually survive nowadays if they're prematurely born within 5 to 6 months of their birth or their development. Awesome. So, maternal drug use. So, most drugs consumed by pregnant women can pass through the placenta. Now, the placenta is a structure that allows oxygen and nutrients to pass into the fetus from the mother's bloodstream and bodily waste to pass out to the mother. Teratogens, remember, are agents such as chemicals and viruses that can reach into the embryo or the fetus during the prenatal development and cause harm. Teratogens are so tiny that they can actually pierce through the placenta and they can affect development in the womb. So the fetal alcohol syndrome is something that we did cover in class. Remember, this is the physical and cognitive abnormalities in children caused by pregnant women's heavy drinking. When women are pregnant and heavily drink, they do put their children at risk of developing FAS, or the fetal alcohol syndrome, which includes symptoms like a malnourished skull or just underdeveloped bodies. Now, smoking can lead to miscarriages when pregnant, stillbirth, prematurity, and complications. It also increases the risk of sudden infant death syndrome. So, the child could actually be born and suddenly this child could actually just die. This is what they know or is known as the sudden infant death syndrome, and it's very um, bizarre. So, common teratogens. Some of the common teratogens that you need to be aware of are things like mumps, measles, rubella. Those are teratogens that if the mother that is pregnant contracts it, they can actually pass it down to the offspring. Marijuana is also one of the common teratogens. It causes irritability, nervousness, tremors, infant easily disturbed and startled. Now, with cocaine, it decreases the height, low birth weight, respiratory problems, seizures, learning difficulties. Infant is difficult to soothe. With alcohol, fetal alcohol syndrome is common, delayed growth, facial malformation, learning difficulties, smaller than normal heads. Now, with nicotine, you can actually have a miscarriage, low birth weight, stillbirth, short stature, intellectual disability, and learning disabilities. With mercury, if there is exposure to mercury, it might cause intellectual disability, formerly known as mental retardation, and blindness. With vitamin A, high doses causes facial, ear, central nervous system, and heart defects. With toxoplasmosis, brain swelling, spinal abnormalities, deafness, blindness, and intellectual disabilities. With high water temperatures, increased chance of neural tube effects. So keep that in mind. Now, when we're talking about prenatal development, right, we've already talked about prenatal development and how teratogens can affect it. Well, let's talk about the stages within prenatal development. We have about 2 minutes to cover this, and let's go just end it. We'll end this PowerPoint next time we meet. So let's go ahead and just talk about this. So the zygote. The zygote is a fertilized egg by the sperm. And now this zygote, right, once it's celled in the organism, it contains chromosomes and genes with genetic information. It enters a 2-week period of a rapid cell division and then develops into an embryo. Less than half of all zygotes survive the first 2 weeks. The other part of the zygote becomes the placenta, which filters out the nutrients. During the prenatal period, from conception to birth, it is divided into 3 phases. We have the germinal stage, which happens the first 2 weeks, the embryonic stage, which happens the 2 weeks to 2 months, and then the fetal stage, which happens 2 months to birth. When we're talking about the germinal period or the germinal stage, this is the first phase. It includes the first 2 weeks after conception and 7 days the zygote attaches to the uterine wall. This is called the germinal period. The embryonic stage is the developing human organism from 2 weeks through the second month. Many vital organs, from beating heart, is happening and functioning now. At this time, the baby can hear and recognize sounds and respond to light. Now, when we talk about fetal period, the 9 weeks after conception to birth, organs of the fetus develop, become functional, and a period of tremendous growth. Length of the fetus increases about 20 times. Weight increases from 1 ounce to 2 months to a little over 7 pounds. So we'll stop right here, guys. Next time we'll pick up from prenatal development right here in this picture. But for today, just take everything that we spoke about into consideration, and please go ahead and review. And while you're watching this video, go ahead and take some notes so that way you're successful and you have some notes in reference to developmental psychology. This is the only week that we'll cover it, and have yourself a great day, guys. I'll see you next time.